Yikes, it's a Yeti, not a bear. What time is it? Time for the Daily Donut. I'm one step ahead of you guys. I already took a bite out of the donut. A few days ago, a remarkable thing happened. The Mountain Division of the Indian Army announced that they had run across Yeti tracks. And they were serious. It wasn't a joke. It's quite remarkable. And the fallout from it is also quite remarkable. It was announced, I mean, there was a couple news channels that covered it, but for the most part, the information was kind of subdued. Like, it wasn't really thrust into the mainstream consciousness. It didn't really go viral. Now, I have some additional information about these tracks. Apparently, the stride was about 6 feet, roughly 2 meters. The size of the tracks themselves were 35 inches long and I believe 14 inches wide. Big tracks. In fact, as one guy said, that they'd have to be a dinosaur. Now, one of the news outlets said that the interesting thing about the tracks was it was as if they were walking on a tightrope. That perked my interest. That caught my attention. Why did it catch your attention, Michael? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to show you a trackway by my friend Randy Bryson from northwestern Canada, or southwestern Canada. I guess it's the southern part of Canada. You will note these tracks are very similar. They're a little smaller, they're fresher, they've got more, detail, but they also walk a tightrope. This is consistent with tracks of the North American Sasquatch. They tend to walk in a straight line, atypical for human beings. We tend to not walk in a straight line unless we're engaged in an OUI examination, right? Walk a straight line. We should tell the police officers it's not natural. It's not natural, man. It's not natural. It's not natural for us to walk in a straight line. That's not how people walk. It is, however, how the Sasquatch walks. I don't know why that is. I just know they do. Now, the main critical aspect of this, or the critics, I guess, the skeptics, are saying that the Indian Army of the Mountain Division, they don't know what bear tracks look like. Apparently, this is what they're saying, because they're claiming, even though they weren't there, that these are bear tracks. And I think the explanation I saw was that one guy said that, well, the bears, when they're in the jungle, even though they're not in the jungle on the mountain, but apparently when they're in the jungle, they'll walk with like one foot here, and then they'll put the other foot, superimposed upon the hind foot, leaving what looks like toe marks out here, and so it looks like a footprint, like a human footprint, humanoid, human-type footprint. That still would not explain a 35-inch track. 35 inches. I mean, that's huge. That's dinosaur size. And then the other part of the convoluted explanation, saying that it was a bear, was that the bear was also followed by a young cub, apparently, that was jumping, apparently able to leap 6 feet at a time in deep snow and land every single time in the tracks of its mother. It almost stretches credibility to even come up with such a convoluted answer. It's perplexing to me why people will stand on the head, rub their tummies, try to chew gum, and drink water to explain away the obvious, right? Now, the tracks were quite degraded and had obviously frozen and thawed, had some weather effects to them because there was not a lot of detail there. But the 6-foot stride is pretty consistent. 35-inch long track is a bit long. I mean, that would be a massively tall Sasquatch or Yeti. But it's not outside the realm. I mean, I've heard of 20-inch tracks. I suppose, with the freezing and thawing, and if it stepped in deep snow and whatever, that you could get a 35-inch track. And a 6-inch stride, that makes sense. That's way, a human being does about a 2.5 foot to 3 foot stride. You can stretch out and do a 3 foot stride. Probably not in deep snow. You wouldn't be doing a 3 foot stride. So you're talking about, if it was a humanoid type creature, you're talking about something that's probably 12 to 15 foot tall. At least 12 foot tall. So those dimensions, those sizes, seem pretty consistent with what we've experienced with North American Sasquatch. And the Yeti is very similar. Similar in its morphology, the way it looks, similar in its behavior. It whistles, it throws rocks, it throws sticks. The other interesting thing about the Yeti and the Sasquatch that are very similar is that both the Yeti and the Sasquatch, for the most part, are presented by the mainstream press as apes, like the aper model of a physical Gigantopithecus blackie or some other remnant hominid humanoid type creature covered in fur that you could dart or shoot and drag down to the town office, put a tag on it. But when you delve a little deeper into both the Yeti and the Sasquatch, you find out that there's a deeply spiritual, paranormal, supernatural, or aspects of it that exist in a science that's beyond our understanding of conventional science. In other words, they appear to do magic. As I think it was Isaac Asimov said, any technology sufficiently advanced would appear to be magic to us. And it would not surprise me. In fact, I would be shocked if the Yeti is not also connected to UFOs, just like the Sasquatch, and mind speak and all of that stuff. So it's really interesting that they're very similar, because they're presented one way by the press, but actually when you delve a little deeper with the indigenous people of the area, just like when you talk to the North American Indians and or the pagan Celts, Scottish, Irish, English, Green Man mythos, any of these three groups, when you talk to them, right, you delve into the mythology, into their stories and histories, you find out that there's a paranormal aspect to this. So there's an aspect to it that exists outside our knowledge of science. Isn't it curious that people are so quick to say it's a bear when it's not typical of a bear? It's not. You mean to tell me this is a bear making a... Okay, so let's say it's a bear walking, like this. How in bloody hell is it accomplishing a 6 foot stride? This is why I'm saying it's not a bear. That alone will tell you it's not a bear. There's not a bear that I'm aware of that has a 6 foot stride. 6 feet! Good grief. How big of a bear would that have to be? Most bears that I am familiar with, and I run across a lot of tracks from, 200, 300, 400 pound bears, their stride is quite short. 1.5 feet, 2 feet maybe 2 feet on the extreme. But for the most part, bear tracks are quite close together, and they don't walk in a straight line. They're staggered. Bear tracks are usually staggered, and they don't usually superimpose on every single track. Occasionally, depending on the terrain and what they're walking around, you'll get a double print. What's called a double print. They'll superimpose like this: hind foot, front foot, toes, and it'll look like it's an elongated print. But that's not all the time. That's the rarity. That's not the norm. And I've never heard of a bear with a 6 foot stride. I don't know, do Kodiak bears have a 6 foot stride? Maybe one of you guys can tell me. Maybe if somebody watching this right now is from Alaska, has some experience with grizzly bears, you could tell me, how big of a bear would it take to make a 6 foot stride? In deep snow, no less. It's more difficult when you get into deep snow. A 6 foot stride on the ground would not be a 6 foot stride in deep snow, right? It's almost laughable. Which is why, yikes, it's a Yeti, not a bear. I think the Indian Army is onto something. And apparently the Nepal, am I saying that right? The Nepal Army is kind of like chuckling and saying, "Oh, the Indian Army doesn't know what they're doing. They're bears." As if the Indian Army are a bunch of boobs and can't tell what a bear track is. Apparently they go into the mountains all the time, so you would think they would know what the hell a bear track is. And I've had some experience tracking. I have a degree in biology. I'm not, completely oblivious to tracks. Like, I understand tracks. Fact is, I won a tracking contest on Spike TV's Bigfoot Bounty. That's right. We won the tracking contest. We weren't even trying. We didn't want to win. We won anyways. And I can tell you right now, I can't imagine those being bear tracks. They don't look like bear tracks. They're not typical of bear tracks. And in order to say they're bear tracks, you have to come up with a bear big enough to make a 6-foot stride in deep snow. Every print's a double print. And it has a cub following it that every single time leaps from one track to the other and does the 6-foot thing and never deviates from it. Ever. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think that's crazy talk. But that's just my opinion. As always, I am soliciting you guys' opinions. Knowing that all the details now, or at least all the details that have been released to the public, we'll do a little vote. What do you guys think this is? Do you think this is a bear making a 6-foot stride in deep snow, double prints every time, followed by a cub? Or do you think it's possible that the Indian Army knows what they're talking about and that they've stumbled upon tracks of the legendary Yeti?